Today's episode is sponsored by Midwest Fire. For more than 20 years, Midwest Fire has been manufacturing high-quality tankers, tanker pumpers, and fire rescue vehicles in the United States and Canada. Keeping firefighters safe while enhancing their capabilities is what they do best. To learn more, go to MidwestFire.com.
This is Dave Dodson, creator of the Art of Reading Smoke program and co-author of the newly released Art of Reading Buildings book. And you're listening to the SA Matters radio show with Rich Gasaway. The SA Matters mission is simple. They want to help us see the bad things coming in time to avoid bad outcomes.
Hello, and welcome to episode 70 of the Situational Awareness Matters radio show. I'm your host, Rich Gasaway. The purpose of this show is to improve situational awareness and decision-making for individuals and teams who work in high-risk, high-consequence environments. The SA Matters mission is simple, to help you see the bad things coming and time to avoid bad outcomes. If you've experienced or witnessed a near miss and would like to have a platform to share your lessons learned with others, please contact me by visiting the samatters.com website and clicking on the Contact Us link on the top of the homepage. Have you ever thought about this? That your lessons learned from a near miss could save someone else's life? Think about that for a moment. And if you want to share your experience, contact me. I'm coming to you today from Ontario, Oregon, where I'm in town doing some research on wildland firefighter situational awareness and decision-making. I'd like to thank Dave Lapachelle and the United States Forest Service for the hospitality. In addition to the thick blanket of smoke that is covering the region, there's also heavy hearts as we have learned about the loss of 3 U.S. Forest Service firefighters in Washington State. I don't have any of the details to share with you yet, but I'm sure that by the time this episode airs, there will be some additional information that has come out. Please keep their families in your prayers, as well as all wildland firefighters working on the front lines on some very large fires with some very challenging work ahead of them. In case you missed the last couple episodes, I was in Indiana for 2 weeks delivering 2 one-week Company Officer Development Institute programs, one hosted by the Gary Fire Department and one hosted by the Crawfordsville Fire Department. The Crawfordsville program was the 20th offering of the week-long Company Officer Development Institute. And I'm so honored for these opportunities in the departments that have invited me back over and over again to help develop their next generation leaders. If you're a company officer, aspiring company officer, or chief officer, wondering if this program would be right for your department, the best way that I can describe it is it's a full week of no BS, no theory, and get this, no PowerPoint. We focus on the skills to develop company officers to be successful and help keep the problems out of the chief's office, teaching problem prevention and problem resolution at the company level. It's the company officer development program that I wish I would have had before I was vaulted into a company officer position. I wasn't ready, so I did the best that I knew how. In the process, I created more problems than I solved and made some existing problems worse. It was a disaster. Did I learn? Oh yeah, I learned. But oh, at what a cost. I destroyed friendships and alienated myself from others, and that didn't need to happen. If only I had been taught the skills to be successful before I needed them. What a concept, huh? I want to share an email I received from one of the students in last week's leadership class. This comes from Mark Stowe, the fire chief from the Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania Fire Department. And here's what Mark had to say. Rich, I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for the great class last week. After reflecting on the class over the weekend, I learned much more than I ever imagined. This is a class that I really wish I would have taken a long time ago because it would have helped me in handling so many difficult situations that I faced over the years. It really gave me a new perspective on how to lead my department and my members. The other thing that I thought was great was the chance for the class to actually teach each other their lessons learned throughout their career. This class was honestly one of the best I'd ever taken. There truly was so many great learning experiences in this class. You're an incredible instructor and a mentor to many. I can honestly say that you have changed many of the ways I do business, which has helped me immensely. In closing, again, I thank you for what you do for the fire service and what you have done to better my career. I will be in contact with you concerning holding a class here around Christmas. I look forward to learning from you in the future. Thank you, Mark Stowe from Beaver Falls, for attending the class and for providing me with that awesome feedback. If you're interested in hosting a company officer development program or another leadership program, it can range from 1 day to a full week. Head over to the samatters.com website and click on the Contact Me link. Okay, time to introduce this week's show. The stressed brain does not function the same way as the non-stressed brain. And for first responders, this is a big deal, because the environments we work in are often flooded with stress. Stress changes brain function, and these changes can have some very desirable and some very undesirable impacts on your ability to develop and maintain situational awareness, and on your ability to make decisions. This episode is going to explore some of the impacts of stress on situational awareness and decision making. The tones go off for a reported residential dwelling fire with entrapment. Your heart begins to pound, your respirations increase, and you get a burst of energy. You may even perspire as you don your gear in preparation for the response. You can thank your hypothalamus for that. This small organ in the brain chatters off messages when it senses stress, and other organs respond by releasing drugs, hormones, peptides, neurotransmitters. Just think of it as drugs. One of those drugs is epinephrine, released by the adrenal glands, which are located on the top of your kidneys. When you experience a stress reaction that is chemically induced, it is designed with a singular, Darwinian-driven purpose: survival. Let's talk about what happens when your brain goes on drugs. One of the things that happens is it triggers hereditary instincts. Where do the hereditary instincts come from? They come from your cave-dwelling ancestors. Stick with me as I take you back a couple of million years ago and introduce you to your great-uncle Ugg, the cave dweller. Ugg would come to work, check in with the boss at the boss's cave, and the boss would hand him a club and a spear and say, "Your job today, Ugg, is to go out and hunt." And on the hunt he would go. And while he was hunting in the tall grasses of the Serengeti, the grasses would part, and there would be a saber-toothed tiger. Ugg had to make a decision. This was the early decision-maker of our species. If he didn't get it right, he'd become lunch. If he got it right, he would live to hunt another day. There was a lot of trial and error going on at those times as we were first learning how to survive in a hostile environment where we were not the predominant species, but we were a prey. Ugg's decisions would set his fate. Fight or flight is what we know as the decision-making process that is induced by the chemicals when we are under stress. Fight, kill the animal. Flight, run away from it. Either way could result in survival. There's a third component to fight or flight, one far less talked about, but equally as prevalent, and that is freeze. Now you might imagine, why in the world would we ever freeze? Fight seems like a good survival tactic. Flight seems like a good survival tactic, but why freeze in place? Well, here's what anthropologists have speculated. The reason that we might freeze is because sometimes when the grass is parted, there wasn't a saber-toothed tiger there. There was a whole pack of saber-toothed tigers. And when Ugg knew he couldn't kill a dozen of them, he couldn't outrun a dozen of them. His only possible survival tactic would be to freeze in place, become a tree, not move, and hope that the saber-toothed tigers would pass by without seeing him, and he would live to hunt another day. For if they saw him, he would surely become the lunch of those ravenous predators. Freeze is one of the things that can happen when we're under stress. And when you freeze, your vocal cords may freeze too. You see, as the muscles freeze, the vocal cords are controlled by muscles, which means the vocal cords might freeze as well. When you think about Ugg in his cave-dwelling disposition there, facing a dozen saber-toothed tigers, and freezing as a survival tactic, having the vocal cords freeze so that Ugg couldn't scream seems to make sense. Why would you freeze in place and then let out a scream, as if to tell the saber-toothed tigers, here I am, come and eat me? So the vocal cords can be frozen, locked in place, unable to utter a sound. If they are able to utter sounds, those sounds may not sound like words, if the vocal cords cannot form the muscles into the right features to make words. Responders who are frozen, if they can muster the ability to key their radio, may not even be able to say words, but mere utterances of sounds that might sound like screams or just gibberish. Listen to Mayday calls, and you'll hear some of this. So the hereditary instincts kick in, and we have fight, flight, or freeze. Rational judgment can become impaired. You have two sides of your brain, left brain and right brain. Left brain is the predominantly rational brain, used for mathematics, analytics, and rational thinking. When you're under a high degree of stress, that side of the brain does not function as efficiently as when you're not under stress. You might be thinking, well, if I'm not using my rational brain, does that mean I'm going to act irrational? No. What's going to happen is that the right side of your brain is going to kick into high gear, and you're going to use it, the creative, the artistic, the musical side of the brain, very creative side. The intuitive brain kicks in, and then you start to solve problems based on instinct, primal responses. The intuitive right brain is very quick at assessing information and making rapid decisions. The rational brain is very slow, not very slow, but slower at making decisions, because the rational brain wants to analyze. The intuitive brain just wants to go with instinct and gut feel. This can be very helpful as you are seeking a way to survive in a tight spot under time compression. There's not a lot of time to do rational analysis. Another thing that can happen when you're under stress is your attention can narrow. Now, this narrowing of attention is sometimes called tunnel vision. If you suffer from true tunnel vision, you will literally see a narrowing of your visual field. Again, this is chemically induced. The narrowing of the visual field will give the appearance that you're looking through a tunnel. Or as one person in a previous episode described, who had experienced tunnel vision, he said it looked like he was looking through the hole in a paper towel roll. And everything else around the perimeter was black. He couldn't see anything. That narrowing of attention, again, is your brain's way of trying to focus your attention down to what it perceives to be the threat to survival. You can also have something happen called hypervigilance. Let's break that word down. Hyper means high or heightened, and vigilance means your level of alertness. You can have a hyper or elevated level of alertness when you're under stress, again, chemically induced. This means that you can actually see better when you're under stress than when you're not. It's like the chemicals turn up the gain on your visual acuity. You can also hear better when you're under stress. In fact, all of your senses become much more vigilant when you're under high degrees of stress. Why? Again, back to the Darwinian explanation. Survival, trying to help you see, hear, feel, taste, and smell those things that would represent a threat to your survival. When you're hypervigilant, all the senses gain is turned up, which means more input is coming in. As those inputs come in, they have to travel down neural pathways to a place where they all are assembled to form understanding. This is a process that I explain rather extensively in the flawed situational awareness or mental management of emergency classes. But the input comes down to a central place where it gets put together. When you have excessive amounts of input, it slows the brain's ability to process the meaning of all of that input. And this is where things can start to go awry in the development and maintaining of situational awareness. Because there's so many inputs, sometimes what will happen is the brain will literally not process the meaning of some inputs and push some of the inputs kind of off the sketch pad. I demonstrate this with an exercise that I do when I put some participants in my class under stress and then give them an exercise to perform, and we are literally able to see this meltdown as a result of hypervigilance. When the brain gets overloaded and overwhelmed with too many inputs, it just starts to shut down on the processing of the meaning of new inputs. You might even find yourself acknowledging the input, hearing a piece of radio traffic and acknowledging the radio traffic more out of habit of knowing that you need to acknowledge the traffic than the fact that you understood. You may say, message received, or I understand, and that's fine, but unless the brain processes the meaning of those words, you don't truly understand. You may see things that you think you're understanding what's going on, but if the brain hasn't taken time to process the meaning of that information, you may not truly understand what you're seeing. You truly can see things that you don't understand the meaning of, and you can hear things that you do not understand the meaning of. Coupled with that is the fact that there can be some incongruencies between what you see and what you hear. You can see things that mean one thing, but hear things that mean another. This incongruency can cause some confusion inside the brain as it's trying to form an understanding of what is happening. The example that I like to use that demonstrates this amply is to go to your favorite Bath and Body store. I like Bath and Body Works as the one that I buy things for my wife at, and I'll use that as the example. In there they sell a hand soap that is a coconut mango hand soap. And I like to use that in my bathroom. And when I squirt that on my hands, that foamy soap, and I lather up, I like to bring that up to my nose and just smell the coconut mango hand soap. I don't know why, but for some reason that always mentally puts me on a beach. I don't know if it's back to early days when I used to have the coconut scented tanning lotions or what it is, but I just smell that coconut and I'm transformed to the beach, and I think about coconuts and I envision coconut ice cream, which is one of my favorite ice cream flavors. But then what would happen if you tasted the soap? It surely wouldn't taste like coconut. This would create an incongruency between what you're smelling and what you're tasting. This is an example of how these incongruencies can occur inside the brain as you see things that mean one thing and hear things that mean another, smell things that mean one thing but taste something that means something else. Now, hopefully at incident scenes we're not tasting and smelling too much, but it's all in the sake of providing the example. Another thing that can happen when you're under stress and these chemicals are coercing through your system is you can struggle to understand and process the meaning of complex information and detailed information. Because the rational judgment system is not functioning as it would if you were, say, sitting in your office, your ability to understand and process the meaning of complex and detailed information becomes challenged. The volumes of information that you have to process makes it hard for you to understand what is going on. The complexity of information can make it harder to understand what is going on. You see, there's some people that think if they just have more information, they can make a better decision, which is maybe true in an office when you're sitting there doing the budget, but it's not true when you're operating at an incident scene with high stress and high consequence conditions. Volumes of information under stress are not your friend, they're your enemy. What you need really is a small amount of the most important pieces of information. Think of it as putting together a puzzle. When you're under stress, you don't want 1,000 puzzle pieces to put together to try to figure out what's going on. What you really need is like 6 or 7 really big pieces of the puzzle that you can put together quickly or see quickly that they're not fitting together instead of trying to make sense out of 1,000 pieces. The more complex the information, the more detailed, the more voluminous of the information, the harder it can be to figure out what is going on. The last thing I want to share is that under stress you can revert back to behaviors that are comfortable, routine, and reflect your habits. We are creatures of habit, and there is no environment where that is more in play than when you're under stress. The way you train is going to come back to be your automatic performance under stress. There isn't even any conscious thought required. The one thing that drives me crazy is I hear instructors that'll talk to students in a classroom and say, now remember that when you're at an incident scene, you need to do this, and you need to do this, and you need to do this. But then when they go out and practice it, they don't necessarily turn that good, logical classroom instruction into hands-on skills on the training ground. And that becomes the habits and routines are what they do in the hands-on. For example, a very easy example. In the classroom, they might be showing videos of incident scenes and talking about how to do size-ups and how to do, read the smoke and building construction and decomposition and looking at the speed of the incident changing conditions and trying to do survivability profiling of victims and so on in the classroom. And they might say to the students, now remember, it's very important to do your 360-degree size-up as the foundation of forming your situational awareness and to start the decision-making process. And all the students would probably nod their head, yep, got it. But then, when they go out onto the drill ground, very often, the 360-degree size-up is not done. They light the fire in the burn building, the crew takes the hose line, and they make the entry, completely missing the opportunity to make the decision of go or no-go based on the information that should be assessed in making that decision. If you practice enough that way, of skipping the 360-degree size-up in training, then don't be surprised when firefighters arrive at the scene of real fires and don't conduct 360-degree size-ups. If you think that's a big problem, or not a big problem, just look at the line of duty death reports and see how many of them implicate issues with improper size-up. It makes sense. The size-up is the process where the beginning of situational awareness is formed. Perception, gathering information, clues and cues about what's happening in the environment around you. Suffice it to say, stress changes brain function, and the more you know about how and why, the better prepared you'll be to take advantage of your brain's focus on survival, including the good and bad effects of stress. Before I close out today's episode, I want to take a moment to thank the departments and organizations that have hosted recent Situational Awareness Matters tour stops. Your efforts to bring this valuable and powerful training on situational awareness and high-risk, high-consequence decision-making to your members and others in your region are greatly appreciated. The West Point Military Academy in West Point, New York, the Aberdeen Proving Ground Military Facility in Aberdeen, Maryland, the Gary, Indiana Fire Department, the Wadesville Fire Department, and the Crawfordsville Fire Department. If you're interested in joining me for upcoming events, you can hook up with me at Fire Rescue International in Atlanta, Georgia, August 26th to 28th. September 10th, I'll be on the campus of the National Fire Academy for their Executive Fire Officer Graduate Symposium doing a Chuck Chat, which was named after Chuck Burkell, an inspiring 20-minute TEDx type talk on creating the thinking firefighter. On September 12th, I'll be in Plainfield, Michigan. On September 14th, in Bloomfield Township, Michigan. September 23rd, I'll be giving the closing keynote at the Fire Rescue Canada Conference in Victoria, British Columbia. September 26th at the Delran, New Jersey Fire Department, and September 28th, a full-day officer development program on situational awareness at the Ontario Fire College in Gravenhurst, Ontario. If you're interested in attending an upcoming Situational Awareness Matters tour stop, head over to the SA Matters website and click on the blue box on the right-hand side of the homepage labeled Upcoming Event Schedule. Here's hoping there's a tour stop near you, and we'll get a chance to meet up. If you're interested in adding your department or association to the lineup for a tour stop, contact me through the website, and we'll get something set up for you. If you're not a member of the SA Matters community of learners, please consider joining. There are more than 5,000 members connected here on SA Matters, sharing ideas about how to improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making, how to make members critical thinkers and resilient problem solvers. Membership is free, and when you sign up, I'll send you a special report that I've created called 25 Best Practices for Improving First Responder Safety. If you're not a member yet, head over to the SA Matters website and click on the red box on the right side of the homepage that says Free Membership. As a reminder, every episode of the SA Matters radio show has a corresponding show notes page on the samatters.com website. All the most recent episodes scroll on the homepage, but for older episodes, you'd go to samatters.com / and the episode number, and that'll take you to that episode. And I always mention the episode numbers at the start of the show. So, for example, if you wanted to access, say, episode 50, you would open your internet browser, type www.samatters.com / 50, and that'll take you to the page that contains the link to that episode. The show notes page contains additional information and resources about the episode, and depending on what guest I might have, it might include some incident scene pictures, videos, and audio, and contact information for the guest. On the show notes page, you can also ask questions and leave feedback on the episode. If you want to get connected with me on social media, you can follow me at Rich Gasaway on Twitter, at Rich Gasaway, or at SA Matters on Twitter. The SA Matters Twitter community is nearly 16,000 followers strong, all sharing information about how to improve situational awareness and high-risk decision-making, and thanks for those who are coming along with me on that journey. You can also get connected with me on Facebook by liking SA Matters page on Facebook, and on LinkedIn by searching Rich Gasaway on LinkedIn. And thanks to everyone on Facebook and LinkedIn who've connected with me there. If you like the show, I'd ask that you consider going over to iTunes or Stitcher Radio and subscribing. Search for SA Matters Radio. That's SA Matters Radio. Please consider leaving some feedback there. And if you like the show, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give it a 5-star review. Not only will that motivate me to work harder for you, but it will also help others to find the show. Well, that's it. Episode 70 is complete. Thank you to our sponsor, Midwest Fire. And thank you to our live event hosts. Thank you to our listeners for sharing some of your valuable time with me today. I really appreciate your support of the SA Matters mission. Be safe out there, and may the peace of the Lord and strong situational awareness be with you always.
You've been listening to the Situational Awareness Matters radio show with Dr. Richard B. Gasaway. If you are interested in learning more about situational awareness, human factors, and decision-making under stress, visit samatters.com. If you are interested in booking Dr. Gasaway for an upcoming event, visit his personal website at richgasaway.com.